Okay, guys, well, I guess I'll get started on my section. Thank you guys for coming tonight, first off. I appreciate you guys. I am the owner of the shop here, one of the owners. I am also a signature fly tires with Doug Olette on Umqua Feather Merchants. I got one fly, he's got like 15, so I do what I can, but yeah, definitely no legend like Doug. So thank you guys for listening. This is a fly that I've been fishing out of Pyramid actually just for a pretty short while, just a couple of years now. And it's, you know, something I've tweaked over the years as far as a midge pattern. So starting off with the hook that I use, I'm a firm believer in this bomber style hook. It's kind of that continuous bend, if we're putting it here on the camera, it's kind of that continuous bend hook, you know, as opposed to the scud hooks that you may see or just straight shank hooks. Straight shank hooks certainly work well too. Scud hooks have their days. I do believe that this kind of continuous bend hook is the best to mimic midges in particular. This is an XT250. So it's a new hook from Umqua. It's a 2 times heavy. I've had really good luck with it, not bending out on any fish. It's been a really good hook for me. One of the differences that I do with my midges, so I'll pinch the barb down here and stick it in the vise. Actually, one of the differences that I do with my midges that you will see with a lot of factory midges is on a countersunk bead here, I'm actually going to take it and I'm going to put the countersunk side up against the eye of the hook. So normally with the countersunk bead you would do the smaller side there, but this guy I swap it, and that way it gives me just a little bit more hook shank to be able to tie onto it, so it's a little bit longer profile that way. And yeah, I think it just looks a little bit better.
You can still get at the eye.
Yeah, that you got to be careful with what size bead you're using. So yeah, for the most part, you obviously do want to always check. You know, in this case, if you're seeing it here on the screen, it does still have plenty of space for you to be able to thread it through. So the whole concept with midges out there nowadays is tie them skinny. So you'll notice when I tie this fly that I'm purposeful with essentially every thread wrap that I do, not building bulk when I don't have to. And that includes to when I attach the wire. I think that's one of the things that kind of makes it pretty unique, which I don't have the wire ready. So yeah, one of the things that does make it pretty unique is just using very minimal thread wraps and keeping everything really thin. Okay, so I'm going to start it like I would most any fly, where I start it right behind the bead. And I don't have my scissors either. I didn't think about this. Yeah, I can break it off right here, but thank you, Doug. That's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yep. So start it behind the bead. Thank you. And just do single thread wraps all the way back. Every thread wrap going further back till I get to about the barb. That's usually where I measure it. So stop right at the barb there. You'll notice that it keeps it really thin. You know, there's almost even some translucency there to where you can kind of see a little bit of that hook shank still poking through. The next thing I do is I take some wire, and the size of the wire, I go pretty small. This is small in the Ultra thread, the UNI Ultra wire. A lot of times I'll even use extra small. This is a size 10 hook, and then the bead is a 1/8. So it's, or maybe this is the next one up, 7/32. So, you know, you want to kind of match the wire size to the size of the hook. In this case, I'm going to do a small. I do like to do an extra small. Sometimes I'll use a brassy. And I just helicoptered that off. The trick that I do, where you see a lot of people, their main thing is to basically match the wire length to the hook shank, tie it in all the way. That creates bulk. So what I'll do is I basically will tie in, do a pinch wrap there, tie it in just enough to basically attach the wire where I know it's not going anywhere. and then I take both those pieces of wire, the tag and the main section of it, and pull it up. Okay, and then I leave that there. And then I do one thread wrap beyond it, just so I can advance my thread. Take a small little section of my hollow tinsel. This is going to be the Vivis cranberry color. For my knowledge, at least through Hairline, they are discontinuing the Vivis cranberry color. So the UNI and their wine color is just as good. It's also less expensive. So we'll be swapping that out here in the shop with the UNI for the future. And then I just tie in just a little bit. Don't tie in the entire bit, just kind of catch it, right? So very minimal there. And then I basically just do an advance all the way up to the bead, and then back down about essentially halfway, or maybe just a little bit more than halfway. And then I will take my tinsel and I wrap it on those thread wraps that's securing my wire. About 1, 2, 3 of those. And then I cut it a little short, so oops, bear with me here. But I do, normally I give myself a little bit more so I don't have to stop it every time, but do about essentially a third of the hook shank, so maybe a little bit more. Right there. Tie that off. So now I have hollow tinsel for about a third of the hook shank, or maybe about half. And then from there, I will create a very, very minimal taper. For my chironomids, like I said, I love them skinny. You do want to still have a little bit of a transition from, I find, from where the, basically right behind the bead. So, you know, that will secure the bead. It'll keep the bead from spinning around on you. And it also creates just a little bit of that kind of natural taper. So I will build up just a little bit of bulk here, bring it back to where my hollow tinsel starts, and then this is UTC 70 wire. UTC is a beautiful, or sorry, thread rather. UTC is a beautiful thread because it lays really flat. Really strong for the diameter, lays really flat. It has a nice sheen to it. Big fan of UTC. So now I will purposefully twist my bobbin counterclockwise to where I see that my thread is unwound. It's almost there. And that's pretty good. And by doing this, it's going to make that thread kind of flare to splay out as I wind it. So what then I will do is I kind of take it and I do open thread wraps, trying to create essentially what we call like a thread blend. So it creates a little bit of a transition from my hollow tinsel into the actual thread body part. So it kind of keeps a little bit of that hollow tinsel poking through, but then allows that thread to kind of look like it's not just straight hollow tinsel to thread. It has like a little bit of a transition. And when you put UV on top of that, it's even more pronounced. Kind of creates more of like a transition in color. So it starts at a lighter color, and then as you get towards just by the collar there, by the bead, it gets nice and dark. So if you do this with various color threads, you could do like black to red to wine. You know, you can transition to 3 thread colors. You can get a really cool kind of transition into various colors of thread and create some pretty cool looks. So it really is like an endless combination. This is kind of the most classic one with the wine thread and the wine tinsel, but you know, really the combinations there are endless. So now I basically have the body. I'm going to add just a little bit more here. That's good. And then basically I'll take my wire and I do 3 wire wraps behind. So 1, 2, 3, or 4 going back behind where the fly started. And that creates just a little bit of that kind of butt of the chironomid, kind of representing that hemoglobin look. If you look at the naturals, they have that little bit of that red hemoglobin a lot of times in the very butt of the fly. And then I do always more or less 7 thread wraps, wire wraps. 7 I just think is a lucky number. So, and it always tends to work out pretty good. Tie that off. Helicopter this off, and then I just helicopter that tail off. This little tag in here. Helicopter that off. Whip finish. And that's a done deal. And then I will also coat this in UV. Adds a lot of durability. It also creates a different sheen, darkens up the thread a bit as well, which helps. So Andrew, would you be able to grab me the UV light over by the line winder, please? I forgot that too. I'm a mess. Doug shows up all professional with his stuff all in a nice box. So yeah, this is going to be, thank you. This is going to be the Sol Res Bone Dry. I live by this stuff. Less is definitely more. Don't need much at all. Literally just enough to coat. And when you do, you can really see that thread color that I was talking about kind of come to life as far as the transition where it gets really nice and dark, but then that hollow tinsel kind of peeks through and creates that two-tone effect where the fly gets its name.
Dang it, I thought I was set with my zebra midges.
It's essentially a zebra midge is all it really is at the end of the day, you know. But yes, there's some nuances there. You know, keeping that wire from wrapping up that whole body to keep the body thin. That blend that I use for kind of transitioning that color. Yeah, those are kind of some of the nuances. So there it is. Yeah. You guys have any questions about it?
So is that the color, or are there various?
If you're asking me, yeah, no, we have them here in the shop. It's a fly that we do stock. We have 3 colors. That's going to be wine with the copper bead. The other color we have is like a brown with the brown wire, or sorry, brown hollow tinsel copper bead. And then the third one we have is like a black and red. So black thread with red hollow tinsel and then a black bead. Typically the higher contrasting colors like black are going to be better fish on those overcast days, whereas the brighter copper bead are typically fished more on the brighter days. And that's just a general rule of thumb. You know, the fish's tendencies can change out there on literally an hourly basis. So what color may work an hour ago may not work, you know. Yeah. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Do you like that for wrap butt that you were talking about for all the colors?
Yeah, I use it on every midge that I tie. It's almost part tradition at this point, just as much as I would say it. Like I don't think that the fish really care about that, to be honest. Yeah, for me, it's kind of just the tradition.
Even
Yeah.
with black, like with a silver wire with a black thread. You do
Yeah. The one thing I would say about if you're really going to get nerdy with it, I would say that on black chironomids, I like to tie on more of a nickel hook, like something bright. As opposed to if I'm tying on most other colors, I like the bronze hook. Not a lot of situations where I really like a straight black nickel hook, other than maybe if I'm tying lighter chironomids. Yeah, I like to have that contrasting color with the hook compared to the fly. You know, I wouldn't do a black nickel hook with like a full black fly. It kind of continues that you know color into the hook, which I think it makes it so that the fish may be more likely to see it in theory. Whereas with, you know, like a bronze or like a nickel, it works really well in terms of refraction of light, you know, similar to that of water. So when you're using like a light colored hook on a dark colored fly, it's more likely for that hook to be able to be, you know, to blend in with the water, right? So, yeah.
So you're using the solo on everything, pretty much?
Solarez?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Solarez, I do think is the best. I've used a bunch of different brands over the years. This is the thinnest. It's the Solarez Bone Dry in particular. Okay. They do have a thin, they have a medium and a thick. The Bone Dry is the thinnest viscosity out of all of them. It has a applicator brush, which is, I think, a nice touch compared to like the little squeeze bottles. It's the strongest. It does tend to hold up the best. You know, I tie these flies by the dozen just because fish do chew them up pretty good. You know, when you're using hemostats on them, that can mess up the wire pretty good. So I do like those, like we talked about last week with those catch and release tools, where you can slide that tool down, pop that hook out without even having to use hemostats on them. It does save your midge.
Heads on dry flies also?
No, no. I would probably just do like a Sally Hansen's or like a Hard as Whole for that. Something that seeps into the thread wraps. Yep. Yep.
Why were you using the large end for the?
Yeah, so it adds a little bit more space on the hook. So it basically, you know, it sits, I mean, we're talking a half a millimeter maybe difference, but that's a big reason. And then, you know, because we tie the midges so skinny, having that countersunk end, if you were to flip that around, you would have to create a pretty big thread dam to be able to have that countersunk end transition to basically to keep that bead in place. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And it doesn't cause a problem with the trying to get through the eye?
Not in this case. There is definitely times where you know you want to make sure you're keeping an eye on that, because yeah, obviously it can be too big to where you're tying a fly that you can't even tie on, which doesn't do you any good. So
My question is, what size beads are you using to the hook?
yeah, I eyeball them at this point, but it was I believe the 1/8 or the 7/32, and then there's definitely a place where I use the 5/32, or sorry, 7/64, excuse me. And then the 5/32 would be basically if I were tying these same size 10s, but I really want to add that extra bit of weight to be able to anchor them down. Yeah.
What size hook was that?
Size 10 and the Umqua XT250. That's a new hook from them. But I also, for other hooks, I also like the Aqua Talon chironomid hook. I think they just call it their chironomid hook. They only have one. That's an awesome hook. It's a wider gap. It's like a spear point style. It's thinner gauge wire, but really, really strong. And it is a nickel finish, so it's a bright nickel finish. And then the third one that I would recommend that you see pretty much everyone tie on out there is the Daiichi 1760. And that's an ultra classic midge hook. Yeah. And those are all that same style, that kind of continuous bend. There's a number of other hooks that you can use that are straight shank or like a curved shank hook.
So there was Daiichi what?
1760. Yep.
I got a question.
Sure.
So if you're, like what Doug was saying, if you're using a floating line,
Mm-hmm.
no indicator.
Yeah.
And that's a tungsten bead.
Yeah.
Correct? How much is that gonna sink below the top surface?
Relative to the leader length, right? So when he mentioned, you know, you want to fish 5 feet deeper than what you think the bottom is, that will allow you to basically get down to depth. You know, I personally don't use that method very often. I'm a bobber dog, so I definitely would say I just pretty much fish. If I'm fishing a bobber, I'll fish what I call, me and my roommate, we would call the magic length. So when I'm standing, I put my fly down right at my toe, and I basically measure my bobber as my arm length. So it's essentially 7.5, 8 feet, depending on how tall you are. So that's kind of what always my go-to depth when I start, but it's something where you do want to play around with it. The fish are, you know, a lot of times on chironomids in particular, they do feed mid-water column. You don't have to get them right down to the bottom. It helps a lot of times, you know, if you do fish within that 1 or 2 feet of the bottom, but they'll absolutely hit them 6 feet under the bobber, 3 feet under the bobber, as well as 14 to 15, 16 feet on the bobber. So it really is something you do want to play around with. Depends on the depth of the beach. I mean, there's so many variables.
Right.
So, All right, guys. Well, I don't have any, talks or anything like that, so I just wanted to tie the fly for you guys, kind of show you some of the nuances there. I hope you guys learned some stuff about how I tie my midges. It is, I think, different than a lot of people. So, and thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Doug, for coming. It was awesome to having a legend in the shop. And yeah, we really appreciate you. We'll be doing a whole bunch more of these in the future. This is just the start. This is our first live stream. So thank you guys for all being a part of that as well. And you guys all have a great night. If you have any other questions, feel free to stick around and happy to talk with you. Right on. All right. Thank you, guys. All right.